Hey guys, in this video I kind of just wanted to explain why the Lowenheim-Skolem theorems, which are often viewed as very counterintuitive, are actually extraordinarily intuitive from the perspective of a realist and semantic externalist model of how mathematical entities work, rather than the formalist model that is popular today. So the idea, semantic externalism, at least the way I use it, it's basically in order to determine whether a reference to a mathematical entity is vague or not. This is a question of knowing what specific entity we are referencing. Right? This is a realist position. So it says you can't actually. Yeah, you're not ever in control of how vague or not your statements are from within a language. See, from the perspective of a formalist, we could maybe just we could start out with 1, 2, 3 ... and then since we don't know what specific, since there are no real objects we're referencing, obviously we come from a perspective of semantic internalism about interpreting reference, and we think this alone is enough to guarantee that our reference is not vague. If we only defined there as being one set of this kind, then of course there's only going to be one set of this kind. Positions like this make the Lowenheim-Skolem theorems very counterintuitive and very difficult to explain. Understanding where they come from relies on, some kind of complicated proof using something like ultrafilters that actually doesn't, it mathematically proves it doesn't intellectually help you understand why they are there at all. Well, from the perspective of a semantic externalist, if we're having to use, since vagueness is determined by what particular entity we are picking out, if we are having to use ellipses to reference an entity, we can't define what the ellipses mean, which obviously we can't do without some kind of prior theory of infinity to restrict which sets the ellipses are naming, then our reference is inherently vague. And basically we can see the Lowenheim-Skolem theorems as really arising from two different facts. The first is, if we're talking about a perspective of classical truth, classical truth, it's all or nothing. It has to be satisfiable everywhere. So for every entity named by a rule, i.e. every model, any classically true statement is going to have to be interpretable over all of these entities. However, our reference, once again, is vague. We don't start out with knowing what entities we are referencing. So any possible real mathematical entity that the name could pick out has to satisfy all the criteria of the definition. Do you see what I'm saying? Basically, I don't know if I'm explaining it that well, but just the combination of the concept that our mathematical names are vague, since we don't know what we can't define the ellipses, in a first order theory that doesn't have a built-in set theory yet, as saying anything. Maybe a better word to use would just be base level theory. We can't define them as saying 1, 2, 3, and then we let this sequence continue aleph 0 times. As semantic externalists, the ellipses actually conjugate a pretty important assumption. And yeah, anyway, I don't know if I'm explaining it great. But the ellipses have to reference, since we haven't defined what the scope of these ellipses is, we are talking about all infinite objects we could talk about. So, of course, our statement has to be true over all of them. And if you don't have this perspective, if you're a semantic internalist, then these theorems will always be completely mysterious, which is why, in another video I argue that the other result that helps to found model theory, Gödel's incompleteness theorems, is actually an argument for realism and externalism as well. But this hopefully this makes clear in my other video about why I think model theory is much more intuitive from a realist perspective.